Would you please be seated and turn to Psalm 139, which is a great psalm of worship and dependence by David on what God has done for him and how it's protected him and so forth. We're at Psalm 139. O Lord, thou hast searched me and known me. Thou knowest my downsitting and mine uprising. Thou understandest my thoughts far off. Thou compassest my path and my lying down, and art acquainted with all my ways. For there is not a word in my tongue, but lo, O Lord, thou knowest it altogether. Thou hast beset me behind and before, and laid thine hand upon me. Such knowledge is too wonderful for me, it is high. I cannot attain unto it. Whither shall I go from thy spirit, or whither shall I flee from thy presence? If I ascend up into heaven, thou art there. If I make my bed in hell, behold, thou art there. If I take the wings of the morning and dwell in the uttermost parts of the sea, even there shall thy hand lead me, and thy right hand shall hold me. If I say, surely the darkness shall cover me, even the night shall be a light about me. Yea, the darkness hideth not from thee, but the night shineth as the day, and the darkness and the light are both alike to thee. For thou hast possessed my reins, thou hast covered me in my mother's womb. I will praise thee, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Marvelous are thy works, and that my soul knoweth right well. Amen. My substance was not hid from thee, when I was made in secret, and curiously wrought in the lowest parts of the earth. Thine eyes did see my substance, yet being unperfect, and in thy book all my members were written, which in continuance were fashioned, when as yet there was none of them. How precious also are thy thoughts unto me, O God! How great is the sum of them! If I should count them, they are more in number than the sand. When I awake, I am still with thee. Thou surely wilt slay the wicked. O God, depart from me, therefore, ye bloody men. For they speak against thee wickedly, and mine enemies take thy name in vain. Do I not hate them, O Lord, that hate thee, and am not grieved with those that rise up against thee? I hate them with a perfect hatred. I count them mine enemies. Search me, O God, and know my heart. Try me and know my thoughts, and see if there be any wicked way in me, and lead me in the way everlasting. Lord, thank you for this morning. Thank you for the good sunshine and all of your earthly delights here, Lord. We thank you for being here with us, Lord, and we encourage all of us to listen to what you have to say this morning, and we praise you and thank you for all our good things. In Jesus' name, amen. Pastor?
Good morning. I want to ask you all to hold up a couple of our people in prayer. First of all, Brother Cleon is sick and he's been having steady problems. And we all need to pray for him. This situation, I believe, is going to be chronic. And we can hold him up in prayer. If he's at all physically able, he'll be here for sure. Next is Brother Ed, and he's fighting a very difficult battle. He's got a strong spirit and a strong will, and he's got a tough fight. He had infection in his knee, and it was kind of set there and compartmentalized or stable, but very bad. And when they did the surgery, it affected all of his body. He's going to have at least 6 weeks of antibiotics. But it's affecting his kidneys, it's affecting his heart. He's having a lot of trouble right now. He could definitely use a lot of prayer. The poison from the infection and the poison from the other things in his body are working against him right now. If his body filters could work on that a bit, it would really help out. And he needs prayer. He's definitely in a miserable situation. And his family's been supporting him, and he's going to have to fight really hard. Lastly, Brother Mike's having some trouble, and I'll ask you to pray for him. And his situation is a little more spiritual. I don't want you to try to be sleuths or anything, but ask God to help him. And he needs help as much as the first two. All right. We have looking through Genesis in chapter 6. And God looks at the face of the earth and he sees mankind. And mankind has come to a point where he's looking constantly at doing things wrong. In Genesis 6 and verse 5, and God saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every imagination of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. And it repented the Lord that he made man on the earth. And it grieved him at his heart. And the Lord said, I will destroy man whom I have created from the face of the earth, both man and beast, and the creeping thing, and the fowls of the air, for it repenteth me that I have made them. But Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord. What a beautiful thing. And each of us, if we can say that we found God's grace, it's not grace if you deserve it. It's grace if you don't deserve it. How good God is. Looks like we got Noah coming in now.
Now, I only have a few moments to speak with you all, then I have to get back to work. I don't want to get behind schedule. I have a deadline to meet, and it's pretty important.
What are you making?
Well, one day God came and he spoke to me, and he had a lot to say. As you were just reading the state of the world and what he has seen, he said he's going to take me and my family and he's going to start over. You know, ever since years ago in the garden when Adam and Eve ate of that fruit, and then sin continued through their sons of Cain and Abel, one slew the other. Ever since then, it's just been a cycle of violence, and years it's been getting worse and worse. So God's going to take me and my family, he's going to start over, and he's instructed me to build a great ark. Now,
what is an ark?
Now, I had some questions about that too, but luckily, I've never seen an ark or ever heard of one. But God gave me some very detailed instructions on how to build it. Now, he said you're going to take and you're going to gather all the gopher wood that you can. So I've had my sons out gathering those, and we're cutting it into lumber. And he says you're going to take this gopher wood and you're going to start constructing this ark, and it's going to have many rooms throughout the ark. Now, I'm not entirely sure, what these rooms are for yet. Later on, God told me exactly what they're going to be for. But I say, okay, I'm writing down these notes, taking my notes, say, all right, God, many, many rooms. And he says you're going to want to take some pitch, and you're going to have to put it inside the rooms and out. And he says this is going to waterproof everything. Okay, we're going to be waterproofing. What's this thing for? So as we continue on, he told me about how after we're done constructing that he's going to send rain and floods, and it's going to take out and destroy everything on the earth except for everyone who's inside the ark. So I'm out, I'm building, I'm finishing. My sons are helping me, and we have to get it done.
You guys know about coffee? Alrighty. You might want to check into that.
Alright, well, I got to get back to work.
Alright. So, in Genesis 6 and verse 18, it says, "But with thee will I establish my covenant, and thou shalt come into the ark, thou, thy sons, and thy wife, and thy sons' wives with thee, and every living thing of all flesh, 2 of every sort shalt thou bring into the ark, to keep them alive with thee, and they shall be male and female, of the fowls after their kind, of the cattle after their kind, of every creeping thing after his kind. 2 of every sort shall come unto thee, to keep them alive. And take thou unto thee of all food that is eaten. Thou shalt gather it to thee, and shalt be for food unto thee and for them. And thus did Noah according to all that God commanded. So did he." Tells us in the New Testament in Hebrews that Noah moved with fear to building the ark. He took God at his word, he believed it, and he acted in faith. And the ark was a salvation to all the animals, to his family. And God did start again with 8 people. How interesting. I go back and think about the grace of God that he's given, and how we receive so freely. Thanks be to God. All right, this time you can be dismissed to your Sunday school classes. All of us in here go to Deuteronomy 18. I'm thankful for everybody that held things up for me while I was unable to be here. I got stuck in the hospital, and I got frustrated about it. And it was every day. I was very close to being able to be dismissed or discharged, but each day something would come up. And I was thinking, I went Wednesday night, and I was going to be there Wednesday night, and I was going to get out Thursday morning. That didn't happen. Then I had surgery on Thursday, and I thought I'll get out Friday morning. It didn't happen at all. And then I thought, well, I'll get out Saturday. No, I didn't get out Saturday, and they said, well, we'll get you out tomorrow. Not Sunday. I came home and had to do hospital at home, and they had rules for me, and I don't always love rules for me, but I followed them. And it was Wednesday morning before I was able to be out, so a whole week. But right about Saturday night, I stopped and I remembered a few things. And I thought about them, and I challenged myself. And the first one was, godliness with contentment is great gain. And I thought about my sister and I doing a puzzle together a couple years ago. And I just kind of like was done with the pieces in front of me, and I was like, give me another tray. And she's like, well, I'm okay with the one I got in front of me. I just want to be content with it, and there's got to be some pieces in here that fit. And I wanted to look at every other available piece to the whole puzzle. And the thing that she said caught me, and it made me think of just being content where you are. And I knew and know that at any time God could change my situation physically, and I could have got out of the hospital. I just needed to have a few ticks of improvement. And on one side of that, I want you to know that sometimes I'm sicker than I look. Don't try to figure it out. According to the doctor. And I want you to know that it's my desire to honor the Lord in each situation and to be thankful and content. So we're going to come into Deuteronomy, and I'm going to start in verse 9, read down through a section of this for us, and I'd like to see us cover it all. So we start in verse 9. It says, when thou art come into the land which the Lord thy God giveth thee, thou shalt not learn to do after the abominations of those nations. There shall not be found. Can you guys turn me down a little bit? There shall not be found among you anyone that maketh his son or his daughter to pass through the fire, or uses divination, or observer of times, or enchanter, or a witch, or a charmer, or a consulter of familiar spirits, or a wizard, or a necromancer, for all these things are an abomination unto the Lord. And because of these abominations, the Lord thy God hath driven them out from before thee. Thou shalt be perfect with the Lord thy God. For these nations which thou shalt possess hearken unto observers of times and unto diviners. But as for thee, the Lord thy God hath not suffered thee to do so. So we look and see, and the first thing mentioned is pass through the fire. And I wanted to kind of just do a recap on this. Sometimes they would actually have a human sacrifice and put one of their sons or daughters in the fire to the god of Moloch, and that was passing through the fire. But other times they had a form of it that was, they would have two fires and they would march the children through the middle. Oh, way better than throwing them. No. Because it's a copy of it. It's also a mockery of what God and Abraham did. Abraham could not swear by anything but the Lord, and the Lord took upon him the whole burden of the covenant and went down between the two fires. So any time that we do something that mimics sin and mimics evil practices, it's not right. Now, the Bible simply talks about a false balance being an abomination. And a false balance at the very beginning is, I've got 3 weights. And I got the weight that is a little short of a pound. And there was a farmer that took a baker to the judge. He said, he baked me a 2-pound cake and it wasn't 2 pounds. And they asked the baker, how did you get that 2-pound weight for the cake? He said, well, I took 2 of the 1-pound loaves of butter I bought from the farmer and I put them on the one side of the balance and they were a little short. They found out. So with what measure is measured to you, it'll be measured to you again. Happened to the farmer. He exposed his own butter wasn't up to a pound, which is kind of interesting. So you got the one weight that is a little short. You got the other weight that is exactly on. In case somebody's around that's in the know and they check. You got the third weight, which is a little heavy. Now, if somebody's measuring out and they're selling you beans, you grab your weight that's a little heavy, and every time you get a scoop of beans, you get a little extra. I just have one weight is what they're saying, a false balance. Now, this false balance is also our balance of life. And I believe that we're all striving to be in balance if we're honest, but we all struggle with being in balance. And Zane, you can be all about the work, and who can say anything about a hard-working, diligent guy right now, right, Sarah? Except he doesn't spend enough time with his wife and doesn't kind of look at her enough and doesn't give her enough attention and leadership and say, well, he's a good worker, but he's got to have out of balance. Now, the easiest thing we can do is dial in somebody else's balance. I want to say, clean your own backyard. But let's continue. So we have the pass through the fire. Then we have several other things there. The observer of times, using divination, a chanter, and a witch. And the scripture gives us a lot on those things. We'll look and say, a lot of these things, the children of Israel learned and were impressed upon them as they observed the Egyptians. Now, they get to a first tight spot, and Moses is up the mountain. They can't ask him anything, and Aaron makes them a thing out of gold. What did he make them? Where would they have learned about that? Back in Egypt. I said, you know what? This calf is a help to you to remember God. No, they started worshiping the calf the first day. There's a problem. Now, some people come into a church and they look and say, where's the cross? Now, it can become a thing where they want to worship the cross. Or they say, I love the empty cross. It's a testimony of Jesus Christ's resurrection. I don't love to see a cross with a Jesus hanging on it, still suffering. I really don't love to see that, because he's not still suffering. And he said in Hebrews, he won't ever be brought to open shame again. We can have that cross become a lucky rabbit's foot. Sorry. We can take it and make it so common that it doesn't mean anything to us, but it's just a good karma, if you will, or a good vibe. And that's not what we want to do with anything. We don't want to come to a place where we've done something so long that it becomes a vain repetition, or it loses its value and its meaning. So, there's all kinds of things that people use, and cultures and societies. The birds over the city. And it's one of the cities in Italy, and the birds gather there. And they have guys that are the experts, and they go out there and they watch the birds, and they write down some of the shapes, and they come back and they say, here's some of the shapes we saw from the birds flying above the city, and here's what it means for us for the next year. Okay, who's ever been to the hospital on a full moon? Emergency room. Oh my goodness. Unless I'm dying, keep me home. Because it does have an effect on people. It's undeniable. So they say, if the moon brings fish up the river to spawn, if the moon has an effect on elk and moose and deer that they drop their babies on a full moon, there's a little more gravity, interestingly enough, then how would it not affect people, Greg? And then it'll find out what sign you were born under and how that emblazed your life, and we can write a chart for you every month to follow. Almost like a religion. It is, don't be an observer of times. Of charming. That's all about good luck. The charming goes down to charming the snakes. There's soothsayers and there's astrologers. There's people that look and say, did a black snake cross your path? Did you see an owl during the daytime? Did you have a cat run across? Or did you break a mirror? Or did you run under a ladder? 2 doctors told me that I had cancer because of bad luck. Interestingly enough. The second doctor, I started laughing so much, I think he was taken back. Now, necromancer. What is that? Okay. This is rhetorical, but go ahead and raise your hand. Who has a relative that they were attached to that has passed away? Well, that's everybody. Good luck, because I have a message from your relative today. Yeah, I went to the graveyard where he's buried, and I slept there for 3 days. And I kept getting closer and closer. Found his grave. Isn't that amazing? And he spoke to me. 3rd day. And I got a message from him. Now, how can she refute the message? It's going to be very difficult because the dead person ain't going to talk. Now, in the scriptures, some of that was called having a familiar spirit. In our modern culture, it can be called having the word's escaping me. But it means that you have connection. And here's what happens in those situations most often. An evil spirit takes that place and will speak or can speak to a person. They become a medium, and they will give that, and that spirit will give them power and things to say. I want to show you this in the Bible. I'm going to read real quick in 1 Samuel 28. King Saul came down to being in a battle with the Philistines. He wanted to talk to God. He wanted to talk to a prophet. He wanted to have some good word. He wanted to pray with somebody before he went into battle, which is a good idea. God would not speak to him. God would not send him a prophet. Nothing. So he said, "Seek me a woman that hath a familiar spirit, that I may go to her and inquire of her." And his servant said, "Behold, there is a woman that hath a familiar spirit at Endor." As I was studying this, I recognized that the Star Wars last movie came out had the Endor in its name. Saul in 28:8 disguised himself, put on another raiment, and he went, and 2 men with him, and they came to the woman by night. And he said, "I pray the divine unto thee by the familiar spirit, and bring me up him whom I shall name unto thee." And the woman said unto him, "Behold, thou knowest what Saul hath done, and how he hath cut off those that have a familiar spirits and wizards out of the land. Wherefore then layest thou a snare for my life, to cause me to die?" This is when they would not have suffered a witch to live, and death would have been her punishment. And Saul sware unto her by the Lord, saying, "As the Lord liveth, there shall no punishment happen thee for this thing." And then said the woman, "Whom shall I bring up?" And he said, "Bring me up Samuel." When the woman saw Samuel, she cried with a loud voice. And the woman spake unto Saul, saying, "Why hast thou deceived me? For thou art Saul." Now here's what happened. She's getting ready to do her little routine. She's getting ready to say, I'm getting some communication, and she's going to follow whatever this familiar spirit would give her. But what happened was Samuel actually came up, and she was scared to death. She basically peed her pants. And here's Samuel. And she sees Samuel. She perceives now a truth. This is Saul. And the power of the principalities and powers, the rulers of darkness, is greater and stronger than we realize or think. So here she has Samuel and Saul. And the king said unto her, Be not afraid, what sawest thou? And the woman said unto her, I saw God descending out of the earth. And she said unto her, What form is he of? And she said, Of an old man cometh up, and he is covered with a mantle. And Saul perceived it was Samuel. And he stooped his face to the ground about himself. And Samuel said unto Saul, Why hast thou disquieted me to bring me up? Saul answered, I am sore distressed. For the Philistines make war against me, and God hath departed from me. And he answered me no more by prophets nor by dreams. Therefore I have called thee, that thou mightest make known unto me what I shall do. And then said Samuel, Wherefore, when thou dost ask of me, seeing the Lord has departed from thee, and has become thine enemy, and the Lord hath done to him as he spake by me, for the Lord hath rent the kingdom out of thine hand, and hath given it to thy neighbor, even to David, because thou obeyest not the voice of the Lord, nor executest his fierce wrath unto Amalek. Therefore hath the Lord done this thing unto thee this day. Moreover, the Lord shall deliver Israel with thee into the hand of the Philistines, and tomorrow shalt thou and thy sons be with me. And the Lord also shall deliver the host of Israel into the hand of the Philistines. Then fell Saul straightway along on the earth, and was sore afraid because of the words of Samuel. And there was no strength in him, for he had eaten no bread all that day nor all the night. So you have the situation where he says, no familiar spirits, he cleanses the land. There's one witch they found, and he went to the witch, and she brought it Samuel. She didn't realize that was what's going to happen. And she got scared to death. But he received no peace from it. This can be real, but in most times it's somebody tricking somebody and charging them money for it. We continue in Hosea 4:6, as my people are destroyed for a lack of knowledge. Because thou hast rejected knowledge, I will also reject thee. And thou shalt be no more priest to me. Seeing thou hast forgotten the law of thy God, I will also forget thy children. We go down through this, and God says, here's what's happened with Israel and myself. Israel has been my people, and I was their God. And they left me to serve other gods. Now, this is called spiritual adultery. When you have committed yourself to God and you have received salvation, your body is not your own anymore. You are a temple for the Holy Ghost, and you glorify God in your body and your spirit, which are His. Now, when you take the temple of God and you join it to another, the salvation is a process where we understand we're a sinner. We recognize God's sacrifice for us through Jesus Christ on the cross to pay for our sin. And we receive that, believe it, and we're placed in God's family. Now, Israel, God's people, and then they went and they served other gods. It's idolatry. And God said, because you have done this, your daughters will commit fornication. Your wives will commit adultery because you have sinned against me. Let me read it for you. Here in Hosea down, I'll start at 4:9. There shall be like people, like priests, and I will punish them for their way and reward them for their doing. For they shall eat and not have enough, and they shall commit whoredom and not be increased, because they have left off to take heed of the Lord. whoredom and new wine and new wine take away the heart. My people ask counsel at their stocks, and their staff declareth unto them, for the spirit of whoredoms hath caused them to err. They have gone whoring from their God. They sacrifice upon the mountaintops and burn incense upon the hills under the oaks and poplars and elms, because the shadow thereof is good. Therefore your daughters shall commit whoredom, and your spouses shall commit adultery. So such things, when you sow the wind, you reap the whirlwind. And when you sow what you sow in a smaller amount, you think the harvest will be great. And as I was in college, I went into my sociology class, and I studied marriage in America. And it was my main study and project for 10 weeks. I studied the family. I studied the dysfunction of the American family. I solidified some statistics on things I already knew. At that point, it was 50% of the marriages in America were ending in divorce. And there was a proliferation of one-parent homes. And some of the psychiatrists and philosophers tried to say the problems in the home came from not having enough financial support. I say this is a biblical problem, and God provided a model for the family. The two things He created on earth, the family first and the church. And He set them as cornerstones of society. The family is deteriorating. And it used to be that a community would look at a church and say, it's a blessing and a benefit that we have a church, and it's going to be a place that will help our people be more moral. It'll make better citizens. Now they sit and look at this piece of land and say, how much could we tax it if we had 6 or 8 houses on it? And they see us as a deficit, not a blessing. Righteousness exalts a nation, sin is a reproach to any people. We've demonstrated very well that there's really no amount of money that's going to fix everything. We've demonstrated that you can't legislate righteousness. We demonstrated that when a nation turns back to God, that's when they're blessed. So we go through this observer of times. The Egyptians had all the days of the week and all the things that they would do on those days. And many of those things were superstitious and brought about through their worship. I was thinking about it. I read a couple weeks ago about step on a crack, break your mother's back. I went out walking one morning and I stepped on all the cracks I came to. My mom was fine. The next morning I avoided every crack that I came to. Successfully, I think. But interesting how things fold in. I was giving somebody a little rhyme from jump roping. And there's superstition embedded in that. There's a lot of different American superstitions. I remember when I went on my honeymoon, I bought a little cookbook from somewhere in Kentucky, but it was not in Kentucky where I went on my honeymoon, so I don't know how I got the book, but it said, wherever the devil can't go himself, he sends an old lady. It wasn't the theme of the whole book, but it was on one page. I don't know if my mom ever found it, but I found it and I thought it was pretty funny. We do have a lot of different superstitions, don't we? Or, and I don't mean we personally, but our country. Somebody asked me on St. Patrick's Day, did you wear green? I had no green on. And then my wife was like suggesting several ways that I could figure out how to wear green. I didn't put any green on. Now, there are things we can do and just have fun with it and not go with the belief. We got to be careful. But some of these things, if we're mimicking something that is definitely evil or is definitely worshiping something else, we should abstain from that. And when you know, that's when you're responsible. The more we know, the further responsible we are. So we have all these different times, and inside of this, I want to cover this in Leviticus. You shall not eat anything with the blood. Neither shall you use enchantments the third time. You shall not round the corners of your head, nor mar the corners of your beard. You shall not make any trimmings, cuttings in your flesh for the dead, nor print any marks upon you. I am the Lord. You can think about that. I want to say out of this verse, there's about 5 things we could go to. I just want to go to one. I really believe strongly about the blood, that you don't eat blood. And it's about the blood being part of the sacrifice. And I know that other faiths refer this to receiving a unit of blood in a medical sense. I don't believe that's what God had here, and that's not the technology nor the capabilities at that point. They were eating the blood, not using it in a medical way. I'll just say that. In Psalm 58, talk about the enchanter. It says their poison is like the poison of a serpent. They're like a dead or deaf adder that stoppeth her ears, which hearkeneth not to the voice of the charmers, charming ever so wisely. And I mentioned this. I learned about the snakes from Doc, and he was the curator of several large zoos. And he said if they ever had a snake strike someone, they documented everything. They had a recording, and they seen what went wrong. But really, the way to keep a snake steady is to give him 2 targets, and he can't focus on either. Now, if you stop them both, he'll strike one. And each time they had a problem like that, they had a problem because somebody made a mistake or lost their focus. They should have shut down the cage and kind of came back to it in a bit. But that's definitely a thing. And then we think about the guy playing the little flute and has a cobra coming out of a pot. I'm not interested in being that guy. But they also have some type of power over the people around them. Exodus 22:18 down to 20 says, Thou shalt not suffer a witch to live. Whosoever lieth with a beast shall surely be put to death. He that sacrificeth to any god, save the Lord, only he shall be utterly destroyed. And Deuteronomy 18:11 says, or a charmer, or a consulter with familiar spirits, or a wizard, or a necromancer. When we get to wizard, it comes to a place of pharmaceutical. And our American culture has went through a cycle. And the cycle was they gave everybody as many pain meds as they wanted for 20 or 30 years. And it ended up with epidemic problems. I'll say this, narcotics are sometimes necessary in the management of pain. I have had people come to me in my capacity as a pastor and say, here's what I'm doing. Am I abusing this? And I'll say, it's a good question that you're concerned enough to ask and address it. But the truth of the matter is, you are the person that is most capable of saying whether you're abusing it or not at the beginning. There comes a point where it will deceive you, and you will not be able to. Mrs. Wright, you want to give us an update, or?
Well, they want to start the dialysis,
Okay.
and I want to talk to them before.
Okay.
That's all.
All right, good. So, when I went into the hospital for my first major surgery, I said to my care team, I don't want to leave the hospital as a drug addict. So I'm going to start real light on my pain meds. Now, I had the right intentions, but it was the wrong course of action. And I got way behind, which means I was in a lot of pain. And I could handle that pain in my mind and in my body, but there was no healing going on. I was clenched up and I was not sleeping, and I was basically, here I am battling this pain. In order to do good healing, you have to be able to relax and sleep. And I got in a better place with the doctor and with the pain. Thank the Lord. I have a bit of understanding about it. I believe that God gives us the leeway to use pain medication. But there comes a point where you don't need it anymore. And each time that I went home with a small amount of pain meds, and I've taken them once or twice as needed till effective. And I always had some left over, and I told my wife, go hide that somewhere. I don't even want to know where it is. And I'll tell you if I need it again. So I put myself in a place of accountability. I'm going to say this, when we take too many pain meds, it opens up a door inside us to the spirit world. And it can be pretty scary. So as needed till effective and in good conscience. I'll say that for everybody. And if you're thinking about, am I abusing this? You're the best person to know. And that's a place of honesty between you and God. So, we go from that over to, here's somebody that picks little peyote mushrooms and takes them. Here's somebody that feeds the mushrooms to the reindeer, catches the urine after the reindeer eat it and process it, and drinks the urine. And they're doing it to have a hallucinogenic vision. And it works. You put enough poison in your body and something like that will come up. And it's a vacuum. And sometimes something very ugly from the spirit world will cover that or enter that. I thank God that I've never had that experience, nor do I want to. I want the one Spirit to be living inside me, the Holy Spirit, and nobody else gets to get in there. So, thank God for that. We've got the Consolator of Familiar Spirits. In my ministry, I've been called one time to a place and prayed with a family that was terrorized by something at night. I didn't encounter it directly, but I did face it head on. I prayed through the house with them, and I'll say this. There's several invites for evil, and one is rebellion, and it's an invite for evil. One is the wrong music. There is music that is honoring to God, edifying to humans, and there is music that is an invitation to evil. And if your spirit is at all in tune. You can recognize the difference. Our old dog, Sydney, Abby would like have some orchestra music that was designed to bring you to a crescendo of being cheerful and happy. And then there was some more that was designed to bring down to a point of sadness. And in just a movie like Rin Tin Tin or something, or Old Yeller, and watch the dog, she'd say, and bring down the sad music. And the dog don't even know why, but she's feeling like a little sorrowful and like what's going on, and it was interesting. Now, the devil, archangel, protecting the throne of God, and somehow he's got pipes inside his body. He's a musical creature that was created by God, and it was to protect, to praise, and to worship God right there at his throne. So when he fell from heaven like lightning, kicked out, and then he's like, how am I going to affect mankind? Well, we're all in tune to music. You ever get a song stuck in your head? You ever get a good song stuck in your head? You ever get the wrong song stuck in your head? Oh, not that. Yeah, it's not edifying. It's not helpful. How did that get stuck? And the devil works on that, and he works through music. Next is dress. When heathen cultures are worshiping evil, they take clothes off. Show more skin. What do you think's happening? Because it goes along with the idolatry, and it goes along with the fornication. It goes along with we're not faithful to God anymore. Just a couple things. For these things are an abomination unto the Lord. And because of these abominations, the Lord thy God doth drive them out from before thee, that thou shalt be perfect with the Lord thy God. Zero tolerance in these nations which thou shalt possess. Hearken unto observations of times, unto diviners. But as for thee, the Lord thy God hath not suffered thee to do so. Sometimes the devil's in the details. And really, if something is classified as an abomination, use this verse, be thou perfect with the Lord thy God. Be careful. And just because others are very cavalier, relaxed, and don't have a sense of concern, I just saw a picture, and it was my family, and they'd found a rattlesnake. They're from Ohio, they're visiting Arizona, and they found a rattlesnake out when a rattlesnake shouldn't be out. Now, they thought that was the coolest thing, and they were all going to get a good look at the rattlesnake. I would have not wanted anything to do with that. Inside that rattlesnake is a couple big teeth. Inside those big teeth is a little vein that goes to a pocket of poison. Inside that poison is death. And I go, well, it's really cold, and the thing is like lethargic, and everything's fine till it ain't. And I'm using the rattlesnake as a parallel. And sometimes we play with sin. I think I got a good handle on this, and everything's going to be fine. Until it's not. Lust when he bringeth forth sin, and sin when it is finished bringeth forth death. Zane, will you close us in prayer this morning?